Assalamu alaikum and welcome to The Report with me, Yasmin Khatoon. On tonight's programme, we'll be looking at Indonesia 10 years on from the tragic tsunami in 2004 that devastated all in its path from East Africa to Indonesia, as well as the rest of the day's headlines. A domestic war crimes tribunal in Bangladesh has sentenced a former minister to death. Syed Muhammad Kaisar was found guilty of charges that included genocide and rape allegedly committed during the 1971 war. Sadia Chowdhury reports.
These are trials that have gripped Bangladesh, even though most of the outcomes have been largely predictable. Muhammad Kaisar is the latest opposition figure to be sentenced in a court which critics say has been set up to silence political dissent. Kaisar, who was a former junior minister during a military government, was found guilty of 14 out of 16 charges. They included war crimes of genocide, rape, extortion, arson and torture. The prosecution say these were committed during Bangladesh's 1971 War of Independence.
For 7 charges, he was given death penalty. For 4 charges, he has been given lifetime imprisonment till his death. And then for the other 3, there was term punishment of 5 years, 7 years and 10 years.
At 73 years of age, Syed Muhammad Kaisar is the 15th person to be convicted and the 13th to receive a death penalty. 1 person has already been executed. Kaisar denies the charges and will be appealing the sentence. Bangladesh became part of Pakistan at the end of British rule in 1947, but broke away after a war between Indian-backed nationalists and Pakistani forces. Pakistani-backed fighters in Bangladesh were accused of numerous abuses during the war, which official figures say led to the deaths of 3 million people and the rape of thousands of women. The country's current Prime Minister launched the tribunal 4 years ago as part of an election manifesto promise to hear cases related to the war. Sheikh Hasina's opponents say she's using the court against the 2 biggest opposition parties, her arch-rival Begum Khaleda Zia's Bangladesh Nationalist Party and its Islamist ally Jamaat al-Islami. International human rights groups say the tribunal falls short of international standards. The trials remain a volatile issue in Bangladesh, where more than 200 people have been killed in violent protests against the tribunal and its decisions. Opposition parties accuse the government of using the violence to detain and execute Jamaat party activists, a claim the Prime Minister denies.
Joining me now in the studio to discuss this is Talha Ahmed, a Bangladesh political commentator and Mufassil Islam and blogger and human rights lawyer. Talha, can I come to you first? Now, this is the 15th sentence. We've been covering this throughout the last 2 years. How significant is this one?
In many respects, it is probably not significant in terms of the internal political dynamic, in that Kaisar doesn't really represent any major political bloc. And he's very much withdrawn from public life for some years now. But obviously it is significant in the sense that it seems yet another man is going to face the death call, if you like, based on flimsy evidence. And for certain, I know that his case is certainly motivated by various local intricacies of politics. And so it seems to me that another valuable life may well be lost soon because of an ill-informed, politically motivated and vendetta-driven politics.
Mufassil?
Well, first of all, I do partially agree with my brother here, but I must add to this as well, because this is a significant case in my understanding. Because, first of all, we have to agree, this is one of the very few people who are being convicted who are not belonging to the Jamaati Islami political party. That's something we need to talk about. And also, if this is a person who is not belonging to Jamaati political party, he does belong to, or he was belonging to a political party that is part of the main government now, with his Jatiyo Party. How come Jatiyo Party leaders are not talking about? How come none of the political leaders are talking about this man? Now, whether this man is a person who should be...
maybe show that it's not targeting just Jamaat Islam leaders?
No, there's a hidden agenda. Okay, so if you want to talk about conspiracy theory, there are 2 sides of the coin. First of all, if you're talking about conspiracy theory on his case, we must understand that where does he come from? Where was he leader of? He was leader of a place, of an area, where is no credible opposition political party except him. He has built up this reputation of winning elections. So he is a formidable opponent. But
I think it's slightly more complex than that. He is withdrawn effectively in retirement for some years, but the dynamics is complex because his son happened to be very close to Sheikh Hasina and was a contender in the local parliamentary election, one of the prosecutors of the War Crimes Tribunal also happened to be from the same constituency, who also had aspirations to stood in the contest in the last election and unsuccessfully sought the party nomination. One of his niece, who is an MP from the neighboring area, is one of the leading campaigner of the Gathok Dalal Nirmul Committee, which campaigned for a death sentence of these people. So in order to discredit his son so that he can't seek Ahmed League's nomination, there is that. And also because, he, in many ways, he's an easy target to show precisely the point that they are not only aiming...
But he has never proven himself to be somebody who is going undercover or who is vanishing from politics just because he was not there for a while. Because we know after 1971 independence of Bangladesh, he was not in political life for 7 years, for heaven's sake. Then he came back in a resounding manner and was elected in 1979 for being an independent candidate. Then he became an agriculture minister in 1988. So going silent in his political life or in his career doesn't mean
with the greatest respect,
not going to be a threat.
My friend probably doesn't understand. I come from that area and I maintain very close relation. He doesn't represent an electoral threat in any respect. Yes, he's very popular. He was very popular, certainly. And yes, 1979 victory that he achieved as an independent candidate was very strong. And also because he comes from a very strong family. His father was a lifetime MNA, and he did have a role in terms of pro-Pakistani role in 1971. That doesn't prove that he was involved in war crimes.
But the significance is there, we must add here. The significance is this, that it's not a question of whether this man committed genocides or whatever we are talking about, but it is true that independent researchers show that this gentleman or individual was very much involved in pro-Pakistani movements. And he had allegedly he had formed his people to go against the Bengali people in support of the Pakistani people who were carrying out the atrocities. But if he was, the question is whether we should be denied, or anybody should be denied of a fair trial. And this trial is in question.
So thinking about this particular trial, his lawyers will appeal the verdict.
Yes.
Are we expecting any sort of a change? We've seen appeals for a number of the different cases.
Do you have to understand the very first primary situation of the case, all the collection of evidences and everything. If that is those evidences are ruined, those witnesses are badgered, then what do we expect?
Does that discredit the call for justice? That's what these courts were set up for, right?
I think the court became discredited from the very start, if you like. The legal framework on which it is based is flawed and weak. The practice conduct of the judges has been very questionable from the start. The quality of judgment has been very poor. Their standing in terms of the treatment afforded to various parties has been poor. So in relation to whether this tribunal has any credibility, I don't think anybody, even within the supporters of Arab League, expects this tribunal to be respected as a credible tribunal. I think the worrying trend is that if people like Kaisar is being put to hang, who else they might go up to? That really...
We've already seen one execution.
But my understanding is, by no means I can say that whether Mr. Kaisar is an innocent guy. We cannot say that whether he is somebody who should be hanged. But the question is whether the trial is fair. European Union had 3 of its resolutions where they said that we need to have a trial. But eventually they did question the authenticity, the sincerity of the tribunal, as well as the American governments.
Now, this court was set up in 2010. It's been continually, it's been running. A number of sentences have been handed down, so nothing is changing. Does the international community need to be saying more, doing more?
What else can we expect? All the international organizations, including Human Rights Watch and everybody, even United Nations, the UNDP are talking about it.
I don't quite agree with that. I think the international community has been allowed in that they have raised their concerns from time to time. But I don't believe the international community has done enough. Certainly the European and the US government, I think they can do a lot more. Why do I say that? I say that because European and the US government has huge leverage both in terms of trade, socio-political and other areas. And I don't believe for a moment that Bangladeshi government would dare to risk their historic relationship in all sorts of relationships. There are family relationships, there are trade and other relationships. And I don't think they would want to risk all of that for anything of this kind. And so at the moment, clearly they feel that the open calls for them to reform this system, they feel that they can defy it without facing too much of a, if you like, suffering too much.
Now, I know we saw Ershad in the clip there, and we spoke about the Jatiya Party. Will this have any impact on the party and their coalition with the current government?
No, not at all.
No?
No.
Kaisar has not been active in Jatiya Party for some years now, and I don't think he is really part of the...
Ershad is someone who is turning his head all around in every direction that he can to have his personal or political gains. So he will rather sacrifice this guy, not talk about it, and remain happily where he is in the last fag end of his life. So he doesn't really care for one Mr. Kaisar going to the gallows.
Now, before the elections that we saw, there was a lot of talk about them not taking place, not being recognised. They have been recognised. The Prime Minister was re-elected. She's still there. The International Crimes Tribunal is still taking place.
I think the issue, there is an issue here. If you say recognized, who is recognized? The government is discredited. European Union has objections, and they even last week they've raised issues about it. Our government in the UK, although they don't say we recognize this, we have to work with the government that is in place, but they recognize that there wasn't a fair election, and they made it very clear when Prime Minister came here. The US ambassador in Bangladesh, even last week, he repeated their call that there needs to be an election as soon as possible that is inclusive. So the government is not recognized, but the problem you have is that government is adamant that they will maintain the Bangladesh Awami League and the coalition
has legal recognition in the international arena. The present government, there's no government saying that this is an illegal government, that's for sure. They're saying that credibility, reliability, reliance, how much can you expect this outcome to be the people's verdict when major political parties didn't participate. So that's something the West is talking about. So, but at the same time, what Sheikh Hasina is doing and her regime is doing, they're doing everything by engaging laws in their favor. So they're enacting laws which are against them was so far. So they're amending the laws and making it legally correct. But legally correct doesn't always mean to be morally correct when the legality doesn't have the moral backing of a government which is a people's government. So that is not there for Sheikh Hasina.
Even on the legality, there are questions about various aspects of their action. I mean, the classic example is the basis on which they dissolved the provision of a caretaker government. And they did it on the back of a court decision, a decision that wasn't published at the time they initiated the change. So there are issues, even legal time. But the bottom line is, which Western government or which global leader is going to say to Bangladeshi government that unless you change, we are not going to engage? And I don't think we're going to see that. Yeah.
Before we move on, I do want to ask you now, the opposition, we had a coalition including Jamaat-e-Islam and the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. Where does that coalition now lie?
I think the coalition is still there, but the problem is, as Khaleda Zia herself said, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, that BNP is going through a very difficult time. Jamaat-Islami is going through a very difficult time because government is so aggressive and so willing to use brute force that the opposition find it very difficult to stood up to them. But today, I don't know if you followed, I mean, Khaleda Zia has been indicted as we speak, and there was a big, show of force of her party, and they came under attack from the pro-government student leaders and also the police. So I don't think it is going away. But when you have a government which is determined to use any force it wishes to, what can you do?
The political leaders, opposition leaders in Bangladesh are not organized. They have mass support to some extent. People go there to listen to Khaleda Zia. But Khaleda Zia or her political party are not formulating any organized way of going against this government legally, politically, or in a revolutionary manner, in any sort of way. So the movement that we are expecting, or anybody expecting, is not forthcoming to my understanding, because the reformation within the opposition political parties is the question of the hour now, which is required even within the Jamaat-e-Islami political party, even in BNP political activists. There are calls for reformations in every corner, because if the opposition, that means the opposition party of the opposition, the ruling government, is so powerful, so formidable, so strong, how come they are so? They are so at the cost of the opposition's weakness, which is the opposition political party. They are weak in every possible way. So they cannot come up with any formulated idea how to challenge the present government in their actions. That's why the political party who is in power, the Awami League, is so powerful now.
Okay. Okay, Talha, Mufassil, thank you very much for joining us this segment of the programme. We are going to have to move on. But do join us for the second part of the show, where we'll be taking a look at the rest of the day's top stories and what you've been saying on Twitter. Do stay with us.